So here we are at last. The blind run of Crash 4 has officially come to a close, and now I'd like to put together one last video summarizing my final thoughts on the game, because, hoo boy, do I have a lot to unpack about this game. I promise this isn't going to be an overly negative review of the game, because, all things considered, this isn't a bad game. Not at all. It does, however, have some rough spots that are hard to ignore, and I'm planning to go over everything about it. The good, the bad, and the ugly. I think I'll start by covering some of the stuff I didn't like first, just to kind of get that out of the way, and then end this with the stuff that I did like, because I would like to end this off on a positive note. So to be clear, since completing the blind run, I have gone back and played through some more of the levels again on my own time, tried some of the previous levels again, and tried some of the extra levels that you unlock at certain points in each world. My apologies to anybody who wanted to see those alternate levels, but trust me, you're not really missing much, other than getting a little explanation for some of the things that happen when you play through the regular levels. For example, there will be a point in a stage where you see a wall get blown up, and then you see Crash or Coco standing there like, well, how'd that happen? Well, that's what the alternate paths cover. You play through a short segment of the level that it's connected to as one of the other characters, a short cutscene plays showing what happens in the Crash and Coco level, and then you have to play through the rest of the level as normal. Given that we are basically playing the same level again, but with a different, and short, start to the level, I really didn't feel like this was worth showing in the playthrough. I'm not sure yet how I will handle these levels when it comes time to play these no damage, but I'll figure that out when I get to it. This also ties in with my feelings about the Flashback Tapes. A cool concept to be sure, but these levels hardly feel like a proper additional level, but rather a glorified bonus round. It's even got the Wampa box and life counters at the bottom of the screen, just like in the bonus rounds. It's a nice idea to show some kind of a backstory behind Crash and Coco, but again, these are kind of short and kind of samey in terms of gameplay after you've played a few. And getting the tapes themselves were proving to be quite a hassle, so I chose to leave these out. I don't think I'm going to include these in the no damage run either, because there's only really two things here that can kill you: crate explosions and pitfalls. There are no enemies or other hazards in these levels, so it's pretty much just a matter of bounce on the crates in the right order or die. I just don't think these levels would make for good videos. But then we come to one of my biggest problems with this game: inverted mode. Now, on paper the idea is fine, being able to play through a level using a special screen filter effect, and you'd have a different effect on each level. I'm fine with that. And if it was just that, I'd have no problem with that. But they decided to make these inverted versions of the levels count as their own level, complete with their own set of gems to collect. The problem here is that it's the exact same level again, where the only difference is the screen filter and the hidden gem is moved somewhere else. Otherwise, the level layout is exactly the same. The box placements are the same. Everything stays as it was originally. It just feels like needless padding. And that's largely how I feel about most of the content in this game. This game was sold to us as having over 100 levels in it, but looking at the numbers, there's only really about 38 proper levels in the game. The rest are inverted remixes of those levels, alternate entrances to existing levels, flashback tapes, which again amount to little more than a bonus room, and boss fights. Are they technically levels? I guess an argument could be made for it, but I feel like these levels, quote-unquote, were used to inflate the number to make the game seem bigger than it really is. Gotta justify that $60 price tag after all. It really made the game something of a drag for me to play. When I go back and see that there are 400 plus gems to be collected in the game, it really feels discouraging. In previous games, there were only 40-something gems to collect, so it wasn't that much of a hassle to put in the extra effort to go for 100%. But here, I just can't be bothered. I'll probably only go back and get enough gems to get all the costumes unlocked and call it a day. Yes, there is a special good ending for getting 100% of the collectibles, but the sheer number of gems is only one part of that equation. The other part, of course, is time trials. Now, I'm not a huge fan of speedrunning levels, so this mode doesn't typically do much for me. I personally only really tolerate it to satisfy 100% completion in a Crash game, which typically amounts to finishing a stage with a Sapphire Relic, or in the case of Huge Adventure, a Gold Relic. But I guess that's just not good enough for this game. Nope. To get the 100% ending, they want you to finish all the levels with no less than a Platinum Relic. the traditionally hardest relic to get in all of the time trials. Are you kidding me? What is the point of even having Sapphire or Gold if they're not good for anything? Combined with how long the levels are in this game, I really just don't want to do time trials. It's just asking too much in my opinion. To help out with time trials, they do give you a new superpower after you beat the game, the triple spin. And let me tell ya, these ain't no speed shoes. The triple spin feels like a hybrid of the speed shoes and Death Tornado spin. You have to time the pressing of the spin button in a specific rhythm to make your character move faster. If your timing is off, you'll slow down. I guess simply holding the button down to run faster was just too simple. They had to make everything about time trials harder, including the simple act of moving forward. It just boggles the mind why they felt this was the way to design the game. This, for me, was the breaking point. And the moment that I decided that I am not going for 100% in this game. It's just not happening. And I haven't even talked about the insanely perfect relics yet. Yeah, remember in Crash 1 how you had to break all the boxes in a stage and reach the end of the level all without dying in order to get gems? The original developers decided not to bring that idea back in the sequels because nobody liked it. Well, they decided to bring it back in full force in Crash 4. You have to revisit each level again to collect a special relic for breaking all the boxes, collecting 80% of the Wumpa Fruit, and clearing the level without dying. Yes, even in Cortex Castle. In a way, I'm probably going to wind up getting these anyway when I play the levels no damage, but the average player isn't going to have the patience for something like this. When you break it down though, I feel like that was the end goal here, to make the game as hard as possible. Well, I'd say they certainly accomplished that, for better or worse. This game is way harder than Crash 1, which I previously considered the hardest entry in the series. Between the absurd amount of gems to collect, the hidden boxes everywhere, the long and difficult levels you'll encounter, the long and difficult challenges you'll encounter, and the amount of times you'll have to replay the same levels again to do it all, it's just too much. I don't think I will ever collect everything there is in the game, and yet, I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. 100% in Crash games isn't usually that hard when you know what to do. Just about anybody could do it, really. But here in Crash 4, they actually made 100% mean something. If you took the time to go back and collect everything there is to collect, and got the full 106% to complete the game, you have truly accomplished something and have earned some serious bragging rights. So, I gotta give the developers some credit there. They made completing the game meaningful. It's an extra challenge for those who want it. You could just play through all the levels and call it a day, but if you want to get the full $60 out of this game, you might want to consider getting enough gems to unlock the costumes too. There are some other aspects that I didn't really care for in this game, like the box placements, the designs of some of the characters, their underutilization in the game's story. The soundtrack was largely forgettable, but honestly, these are just nitpicks compared to some of the other stuff I already brought up. So I feel like I've gotten most of the major problems I have with the game out of the way, so now I'd like to move on to the stuff that I did like. Like I said, although this game gave me more than a few grievances, there were just as many things about the game that I thought it did well. And one of those things was how the game follows the Crash 2 model of stage themes, featuring primarily platforming levels with only a few gimmicks thrown in here and there to spice up the gameplay. As I've said in the past, I felt like games like Crash 3 and Wrath of Cortex overdid it on the gimmicks, so it's nice to see this one is more focused on what matters, which is platforming. The drop shadow for your character has also been improved, so now there's a little yellow reticle directly below you at all times, so depth perception will never be a problem again. Hooray! Quality of life improvements! Another thing I rather like here is the art style. At first I felt a little indifferent about it, but it has really come to grow on me as I play the game more. The models and animations are crisp, and Crash's world has never looked better. I really liked seeing all the different things going on in the background as well. The character models, for the most part, are pretty solid as well. Crash himself looks like a combination of his classic Twin Sanity and Mutants appearances, in a way that I think really works well for him. Cortex is looking a bit more slender now, but honestly I think this makes his body proportions work better. I can get behind this look. Coco's new look has a lot of personality going on, from the goggles on her head to the heart-shaped patch on her overalls. It's different but recognizable and I like it. Overall, pretty strong showing in the visuals department. The elemental masks are a pretty fun idea as well. I was wondering how or if Crash 4 was going to be handling a superpower system, or if Crash would gain new abilities after fighting bosses like in previous games, but the system they came up with here makes a good deal of sense. Having a mask power-up for controlled parts of the level is a good way to have the player utilize their unique powers for specific level challenges without turning into a potentially game-breaking ability somewhere else in the game. There was, of course, the triple spin ability, but, I mean, we need something to get through time trials, right? I pretty well enjoyed all the different world themes in this game as well. We had some pretty familiar places, like an ice world and a prehistoric world, but we also had some new stuff, like a desolate wasteland, a pirate ship, and a carnival in the swamp, just to name a few. Overall, pretty solid lineup of levels with some really good level design. The levels can be quite challenging through much of the game, but by and large, it doesn't make things unfair. A little patience and persistence should be enough to see you through any challenge this game throws at you. My only gripe with them is that they are a little on the long side. So all in all, the game does a lot of things. Some I liked, some I didn't. But where does this game rank on my list of favorite Crash games? Well, as I'm trying to steer away from numbered scores, let's put all the games into a tier list and see where it would fit. Bear in mind that I'm only taking the main series into account. No spin-offs or remakes are being considered here. So, with that in mind, I think I would fit Crash 4 in the B tier, just ahead of Wrath of Cortex. There's just a few too many problems I have with this game to put it any higher, but still I acknowledge that this is a pretty great game with a lot of replay value. Would I recommend this to a first-time player? No, absolutely not. Anyone thinking of getting into the Crash series ought to start with the Insane Trilogy. It is widely available on all major systems, so there's no reason not to. Besides, who ever heard of starting a series on the 4th game anyway? Makes no sense. But there you go, those are my overall thoughts on Crash 4. It's kind of funny, this game tries to make itself out to pretend that Wrath of Cortex didn't happen, and yet I don't think it was any better off for having done so. I personally kind of wish this game wasn't called Crash 4. I wanted them to leave the original trilogy alone and just focus on telling new stories, kind of like a Saturday morning cartoon approach. But now, because of this alternate continuity, I guess we now have a branching path on Crash's timeline, where one goes into Wrath of Cortex and the other goes into Crash 4. After all, Japan now has 2 games called Crash Bandicoot 4. That sure does cause some confusion amongst fans over there. But it is what it is, and I will continue to play this game, learning its mechanics little by little in preparation for the eventual no-damage run that will come with this game. But until then, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time!